Let's resume where I was yesterday. So, working on these tiles. I did a little short stream about making these. I'm still working on some. Just put together some water that I can use. And let me turn this off. I'm using the built-in weather effects that come with 001. And you can get to those by clicking on Environment, or you can right-click on the map itself. Either way. And then you'll find these little sections on rain and snow or clouds. So this system is super ancient. It's built into 001, but it's so old. It's been tough to modify or add new stuff to it over the years. So there's not a lot that you can do. If we look at a script, let's just go find the weather events here. If you'll see, there's really nothing related to weather. You can change the cloud sprites, so you can turn them off, and you can change the sprite being used for the rain. That's really it. There is a, let me see, you can change a couple of the features of the rain, and you can change the cloud opacity and stuff, but that's really it. You can't do much to it. You can't change the angle that the rain is moving. You can't change how much it wobbles. You can't affect the direction of the clouds. You can't. It's really surprising. Even on the lowest setting here, you'll see if I turn off the cloud density and turn on my weather. Let's say I turn off the rain. I've got rain set to 5 right now, but if I turn off the rain, it'll go away. And even setting the density here to 1 puts a lot of these clouds, and you can't really see them because I made them additive. Let me turn that off really quick, and you'll be able to see all these little clouds, these little gray clouds. That's density number 1. I kind of wish that there were, like 7 or 8 of these on screen instead of 50. But once you go to density 2, it just starts getting crazy. And by the time you get to density 5, there's so many on screen that's just absurd that you pretty much never even need to use density 10, because I don't really know what that would be for. You can combine the number of clouds you use. You can use multiple cloud sprites. I've got a different one that it's a additive black sprite, and what that does is it'll wipe out anything that it's blending with. Additive white, the lighter the additive color, the brighter it'll make things. And if you make it black like this, just make a black cloud like a shadow, if you set that to additive, it'll actually cancel out some of these. So that's what I like to do sometimes. It helps when you're working with density 1. It cuts out some of those. I want to try, let me see if adding a third sprite. If you add another one there, sometimes it'll cut out more. So you can use that additive, negative additive black sprite to cancel out some of them. You can still sort of see the outline there because I didn't make it perfectly. I think there's a transparent outline in the sprite that I'll have to fix, but it helps cut down the density of the clouds in 001. So the other thing I'll do here is go back to that first one, make it additive again, because I just kind of wanted to lighten, blend in. It's hard to see, but that helps cut down on how many there are, so you can actually bring up the density, bring in some more clouds. Probably keep it around 2 or 3. Just want it to have this effect. Now the other downside is it doesn't scroll with the map or the camera. So in game it does look a little funky. I don't know if I'm going to use that function or feature at all. I really don't know. Since it's built in, it's got a few settings that you can change, like the variation in size, how fast they move or scroll, and it creates an okay effect. I think a better effect, I've used just seamless noise textures that really, that's not the best way either, because I use square noise textures, mostly from my noise texture packs. If we go in here to the end, I have a bunch of different types of noise available. You can grab these packs off my itch.io or OpenGameArt, totally free. I'll put the links down below in the description. Pretty much, it's just Perlin noise. There's all kinds of different versions you can find in different programs. GIMP has Perlin noise generators. Photoshop has Perlin noise generators. There's a bunch of different kinds, and I've just gone through and generated a bunch of different useful types with more grain, less grain, more octaves, less octaves, darker and lighter areas. These are just quick textures, so you don't have to pull out a noise generator. You can just grab one of these. And I have found that, let's make a copy so I have a third one. And if I go and grab one of those from my noise texture pack, let's do a smaller one from my Perlin. And we'll do one with more dark light values, I think. Maybe that one. We'll just try this one as an experiment. Make sure it's centered, set to overlay, and additive, blah, blah, blah. Disable the lighting. And then I'm going to swap out that. I'm actually going to take these black ones out and put in my new one. So that'll make a whole bunch of nonsense all over the screen because there's a ton of them. Even at a lesser degree, it's kind of crazy. It's not really what I want. But that's a start. Once I start fiddling with it a bit, sometimes I have to turn down the transparency a lot. They'll start to blend into each other, and that's not the best effect because it's got these solid edges, and I have my opacity up really high. Let's make it more like 45 to, I don't know, closer to 60. And so you can still see these moving across the screen. They've got edges now. And I haven't utilized that feature much using the cloud system here. But if I go into this other project, I'm going to pull open. This is another weird one that I haven't gotten into much. Wouldn't mind showing this one off sometime. That's a crafting project, crafting farming game where you actually run around on isometric world maps, and there's all kinds of random stuff you can build. Do I even have my weather set up? Oh, I do. So, okay, it's going to be a little bit weird. There's a pause while stuff loads. Little clothesless man. So, this is while it's generating and building the map, it's putting trees and lakes and caves and rocks and plants and all kinds of stuff all over the place. And then you get free roam just to wander around your little isometric guy. I'll turbo my way. I've got some weather effects that I built into this. I just have to run across the map. There are some biomes like the desert and the snowy biomes. Or I've done some work with the weather. As soon as you get into the biomes, the weather starts kicking in. Well, it's supposed to. There we go. You can kind of see the same effect. Now, the way that the weather systems in 001 work are they're happening to the screen camera, like rather than on the map. So it moves whenever you move. The screen moves the effect. It's unfortunate, but it is how it is. There's little snowflakes. I don't think I had rain anywhere. I mostly just included, I think, sandstorms and snow. Just experimenting with different weather types, because you can only really do snow and rain in 001. There is a movement variation, I think, slider, variation slider, and the variation slider, I believe, adds some wobble to the snow, or to the rain sprite, so it looks more like snow, kind of wobbles around. There's supposed to be sandstorms in the desert. There we are. And you can still see the square edges of my noise. Ideally, I want to make blobs of noise instead of using square noise textures, and that's just fade out the edges with a spherical gradient or some such. Those are ugly cactuses. I forgot I made these ugly cactuses. Can't even punch them down yet. Normally, if you punch them without a weapon, it's supposed to hurt you, but you can chop down trees and speed it up. There's crafting menus and stuff. You can build all kinds of things. Can't punch the rocks. Using some public domain music for the soundtrack just to fill in the silence. Got kind of annoying. Yeah, there's a cave in the middle of the water there. Can't get over to it without building a land bridge, but it's supposed to generate terrain around the edges, but there's a couple lakes. It generates a couple lakes, some caves. The caves are random. There's one in the desert, one in the snowy biome. I think one in the forest, and one generates in the middle of a lake. You just gotta find them. And that's a huge map to explore, so that's the weather effects. Using that same noise technique, using a noise with additive turned on. But right now, this isn't a finished map. This is just an experiment in tileset design, which I've been putting together over here in the World Creator. There's another video you can check out where I put together more of those, or how I did it. But I threw together some water tiles, so I've got some basic waters. Kind of want to use different water texture and have ice, because I need to design several terrain hazards, and there will be stuff like impassable rivers that I think eventually you'll be able to go over water, and lava or magma for, I guess it would be lava. Lava rivers and stuff, so the rover won't be able to go over lava until way later when it gets upgraded. So I'm trying to include a bunch of different things for the rover, so you can upgrade the rover, have different types of plating to withstand heat and temperature, atmospheric pressure or gravity. I'm not sure if it's going to be gravity or atmospheric pressure. I think it's going to be atmospheric pressure.
Entering planetary orbit.
You'll basically land on a planet, you'll do the scan. I'm turbo speeding through everything here. And you'll be able to pick one of these harvest things. One of them, if you find a planet with an anomaly on it, you'll be able to deploy the rover, and it will bring up the rover deploy screen. So there's a little land vehicle that you can move around with. You can only make right turns and stuff. I'm going to try a couple different control schemes just to see what I like the most. So let's see there, I've left my ugly clouds on. Don't want the clouds on at all. Actually, I do want this ugly cloud. And then a little bit of rain. And I can't even see my rain. I just crashed the program. No, I didn't. I need my rain. There's my rain. And I've got some ugly clouds in the background there. I can kind of see them. They're barely there. I'll bump up the opacity just a little bit. Just have this sort of moving. It's really hard to see. You probably can't even see it on the stream.
Scanning. Entering planetary orbit.
So most of my testing takes place with one planet and one system. I haven't made many maps yet, but those will be coming. Once you get to the planet, you'll find the weather conditions. You'll be able to scan it. Before you can actually go down, you'll have to scan the planet and find anything. But you'll be able to explore, drive around these little maps. I'm debating how I'm going to construct them, if it's all going to be hand-generated or hand-designed, or if it's going to be any kind of random generation stuff. I might include random stuff. I'm not sure. I think I want to go with actual hand-designed maps. But this style, at least this style, should make it much easier. The old prototype, the old alpha beta original project was a lot more complicated because I chose to use 3D or a 3D view, a top-down 3D view, and it had little 3D objects and buildings and walls and turrets, and just doing all that myself, doing all the 3D stuff by hand, it just became tedious because designing the maps was vertical as well as you'd crisscross going X and Y. I can make all kinds of stuff in a top-down perspective, but once you add 3D to it, you're adding ramps and platforms, and there's jumping involved, and the rover has a little spring jet thing that lets it jump up into the air, and that got way too complicated. So I prefer this nice, clean top-down look. It's a little bit basic, but this is closer to the old Star Control or Starflight style planet exploration stuff. I think you could drive around in all the directions in Starflight. Maybe even Star Control, but I want to test a few things out. Right now it's got 4 directions. It can turn to the left or turn to the right. I've actually got 2 different types of movement where you can move left, right, up, or down. And then there's a secondary type where you have to turn left or right to rotate. I'm liking that one a little bit more. Feels more like a vehicle. But it's also, I don't know, it's kind of rigid. I might add 8-directional movement so I can go diagonally. We'll find out. I'm still in the process of testing things, and 8-directional movement, I might have to add some more checks to make sure there's not, tile in front of the player if they can't move. And the maps will be designed so that the rover's kind of quartered off inside the map. It can't go off the edges like the player can in space. Since there's no edge to the map in space, you just fly off into the void. But on the planet surfaces, I'd rather, there's a landing zone for the rover, and then you explore trying to find the hotspot that you were just looking at, or the anomaly, or you might have to fight creatures. There's gonna be some weaponry for stunning and capturing critters or something, so you can sell their parts. But that's a long ways away. I still have to figure out all kinds of stuff about the NPCs and enemies, and I think I just crashed 001. Whoops. Fun times. Well, sometimes it takes forever to die. Sometimes it catches up and doesn't die. There we go. It's back. And I'm going to turn off the weather and stuff right there. Oops. So I'm really just kind of experimenting with the terrain maps, and it's a lot of tedious drawing, and some of it's just kind of random. See what looks sort of nice to drive around. I haven't actually implemented the collisions or blocking for any of the tiles that go above the ground, but right now there's a few different types. I've got like mountains, or rock walls that you can't go past. They're impassable walls. There's also gray mountains, so I can have some different types of mountains. I want to make a couple different versions of these mountains. Most likely going to find a certain type of mountain on the planet. And if I do hand-drawn maps, I can do all kinds of like landscape shapes. I can do unique designs out of the tiles. If I want, I can make specific shapes to guide the player through things. Whereas procedural generation, I'd have to ensure that paths are created and drawn, and that the player will be able to get to everything, and that's a little bit more complicated. I don't know if that's what I want to do with this project. Had to grab a drink there. There's also forests. I've made forest tiles, so it just depends on what kind of planet you're on. You might encounter mountains and forests. I do have to make another layer for each of these mountains. I would like to, not for the forests, for the mountains, I want to include another layer so I can draw on top of them to make them look more like mountains. And what that will require is me to I have to find the same textures that I used, but I've been saving all of them. Sometimes while I'm experimenting, I totally space out and forget to save the texture that I was using. So I believe it was one of my lunar textures. Oops. Probably this one, I think. So I've got my water saved. I'll make that 32. I believe that was the one I was using for mountains. Let me get this depth one. And depth 2. I believe that's what it was. Yeah. Okay, so I've got this mountainy texture, but I also want the mountain to be underneath itself, so I have this weird gray. I wonder if I want to blend those or not. Yes, I do. What I could do is make this transparent and do a test. I'm going to do two of these actually. I'm going to do one with transparent and one without. And we'll grab the transparent one first and make a regular one anyway. So now I've got these two. I'm going to try the transparent one first. Gray Mountains B. And then this will be Gray Mountains BC for concave. And we'll come into our editor here. I'm actually going to name this one Mountains E1. This will be Mountains E2. Actually, I want to call it Gray Mountains. That way, whenever you mouse over the tile over here, you can see what's what, even if they have the same basic starting tile. So I want to copy that, paste that, create one more Terraform graphic here, and then come over here and import what we just saved. So I'm going to go back into this folder. This folder starts to get really chaotic after a while, especially while I'm messing with stuff. So I want to pull in our transparent mask, and that's what I was afraid of. So using the transparent color, it does darken the pink, which is not what I want. I believe there's no real way to avoid that. Nope. So if I turn that off, I lose my shading, and I can't shade the pink. So that won't work the way I wanted. So we're just going to import these, and we're going to resave over Gray Mountains B, Gray Mountains BC. All this is going to do is give me a layer that I can paint on top of the other ones. There we are. Ta-da! And its neighboring tile will be the first one. And you draw all on top of it. So, the way that will work, it's probably going to do something funky first. Oops. As we can draw on top of these to make even fancier looking, or I say fancier looking, doot, 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 doot. Yeah. And I've lost a little bit here. What I need to do is come in here. I believe I need to add this guy there. Should be. Oh, nope. That's not what I needed. I want to remove that one. There we go. And you just have to fix corners wherever they mess up like that. But that'll let me add another layer to the mountains so that they have some more depth. It's not super necessary, but it's a nice little touch. There's some places where that won't really work great, so I want to put some more mountain there. A little bit more there, there. Yeah. So I can color in these extra elevation sections just to add a little more detail. I'll make that a little bit thicker so I can have that in there. That's pretty much the idea. It's not super fancy, but it does help it look a little bit more thick, more detailed, more... if I wanted, I could darken or lighten some of the main tile color so it looks slightly different, but I like it that it matches. I like that it's kind of matching the color there. It would be something like that. Put a little bit over here just to fill this in. So right now I'm just kind of testing, driving around these little areas, and this will only work with the gray mountain. I'm going to have to do another one for the brown mountain because it won't line up right with the upper layers, but I can include brown mountain or brown dirt and have a second layer of that as well. So yeah, that's kind of neat. And then wherever I want forest, I can just paint in some forest or trees. We'll kill that corner. Yeah, that's kind of fun. I've got all my tiles nice and rounded, so they all kind of smoothly blend with each other. I'm not angry at the way they look. They look pretty basic, kind of old. If we pull up Starflight, this old game here, oh goodness, Starflight game. You can see a lot of the old images of the surface tend to be like just these tiled basic shapes. This is probably all one planet, but there's a whole bunch of different planets with water, and I don't think I'm going to get this complicated or this complex with mine. These look much simpler, but there's also like cliff edges and ridges and all kinds of things, and I'm going with more of a simple, easy to look at version of that. I want to use simpler shapes, simple outlines, and make it so you can identify easily what everything is, so that when you're exploring, it's not like you don't have to guess at what you're about to drive into. And in a lot of cases, there's going to be super identifiable hazards, like lava is going to be noticeable. It's going to be animated. There's going to be particles and stuff, I believe, on the map when you're on a map with lava. And there's going to be acidic water or acidic lakes, things with bubbles, and it'll be noticeable. You'll know what you're driving onto. Ice is going to look like ice. Sand is going to look like sand. Dirt's going to look like everything's going to look the way it's supposed to. The way Starflight had terrain, you can tell. Some of this is forest and grass and all that. I don't recall that there was much terrain hazard type stuff. You could get slowed down by certain tiles, I believe, which I think in this case it'll be like mud or swamplands that will slow you down. You actually have to drive slower through the swamplands and maybe risk getting attacked by things. But this is essentially what the surface is going to look like, and I haven't fully implemented the menu for it yet. That'll be my next step on my to-do list, I believe, which I can add here since I haven't. It's going to be a whole ordeal because there's more to the surface exploration than what I have here so far.
Scanning.
And right now it's just a button that switches on a camera and turns on the rover. But these are going to swap out. This side actually turns off so that you can see a bunch of statistics about the rover and the crew that's on it. You'll still have the statistics that you scanned when you first entered orbit and did a deep scan. But then you'll be able to drive around and explore these little pocket worlds, pretty much, little pocket maps that are just, they'll each be linked to a hotspot or an anomaly hotspot that you find, but you'll only be able to drive within the boundaries of the stones and the forests and such. And that way I can eliminate having to have some kind of weird stuff on the edge of the map. It'll just be bordered by mountains. So far I haven't added any collectibles. There's no mineable nodes or anything yet. But the rover, it'll be able to mine bigger nodes while it's on these maps and stuff. And sometimes you'll miss things. There's stuff that is missable once you've completed a hotspot. Like, I believe I'm deactivating them so you can't go back, but we'll see. It just depends on certain things. I'm thinking that once you've completed the main objective and found the anomaly and interacted with it, that will be the end of the hotspot. But I might not. I might make it so if it's an anomaly hotspot, you can always come down with your rover and explore, but you can clear out the maps. I used to want to approach it in sort of a Metroidvania kind of way, where you would have to come back to old maps, be it because there was a barrier or something, and that's partly what I'm thinking. Since you can't complete the hotspot until you finish interacting with the anomalies, there will be some cases where you get to a planet and there's some kind of wall or rocks or something that you have to blow up, and you can't get through it yet until you get the right upgrade, and then you come back to the hotspot or the anomaly hotspot and return to the rover drop zone. So those are all steps that I haven't added quite yet. I've been doing a little bit of testing with NPCs, and so far this guy here doesn't do anything. He's just a tester for combat information, and I've made it so NPCs currently don't do anything until they've been attacked. And right now he's not really working correctly. He should be coming after me. And once I enter his proximity, he's supposed to instantly attack me, but oop, I hit him pretty fast. There's more to figure out with enemies. I've also done a whole bunch of reworking, so you can see my frame rate, even while I'm streaming here, is much faster than it was. The other day it was about 100 frames slower. Now it's about 320, 310, 320. On average, it's running around 400, and this is only because I've gone through every single interface in the game. This is something that you should probably do regularly if you don't already. Just make sure all of your interface pieces, make sure update real time is turned off. Make sure that's not on unless you really need it, and you don't need it on anything. You don't need it on your cameras. You don't need it in the camera view. Turn off update real time. Your camera will still work. The only thing you really need it on, for example, if I go over to my buttons, I've got these bars here, and the smooth animation of the speed bar, the bar that shows the player's speed, it's set to update real time because it's constantly checking what your speed is. And those are the only things you should ever really have on update real time. Even the health meter, I've got it set to that for now, because I've currently got an issue where if I update this menu, things get weird. But really, you only want to update this bar every time you lose health, or every time your HP changes. So you can turn off update real time on your health bar, unless if you have effects like healing over time, HP recovery or regen or whatever, and you want the smooth animation of the bar moving back up, then leave it on update real time. Otherwise, just update it every time that you change the health, and to do that you would just use the update interface event here. So in going through the entire project, I've actually moved a few things around. This is currently set to update real time just because it has to constantly update its position and transparency values. The other ones are set to update real time so that they get pushed to their associates location. So the way that this works is this is the base, the indicator base, and then the pointer and the distance. They're invisible. So the distance is just a number, and the pointer is a little arrow that points in the direction of the object you're looking at. They're all set to reposition themselves so that they're exactly where the indicator is. And you can just use these retrieve fields here to retrieve the position that you want it to take, and it will move around the screen. I actually think that works better than a timer, which would position it every frame or every interval, 0.1 seconds and all that. And right now the only thing I have in here is moving the player's minimap dot. I'm actually going to move this somewhere else too, but right now it's running at 0.2, which is really reasonable, so it doesn't actually use up any performance. There are no other timers. Every single field in the game right now is not update real time. They're all set to be updated whenever I call an update interface event, except for the debug menu, so ignore that. Everything else, just go through the whole project, try to make sure that nothing is set to update real time unless absolutely necessary. The other thing for performance in your interfaces, try to combine smaller things into one big thing like this. Try to avoid having gigantic transparent areas on your screen to the best of your ability. You can, just try not to. In this case I have to. I could actually make this into a background, scoot this forward, and resize it to the exact size of this frame, and fill that with black. That would actually be better for performance, I believe, if it's not transparent. But for now, I'm sticking with that one part is transparent. Just don't use big fields with transparency. And anything that's a window field, I don't think any of mine are set to windows anymore, except for this little guy here, which even still, he's not a window either. But the more of those you have, the more window fields you have. And that's if you select window here. These ones use a 9-tile resizing mechanism where it splits the graphic into 9 pieces so you can stretch it out equally across the screen. And I think I've shown that. Actually, that's probably, I could show that here. The function, or the way that works is you can resize it to any size, and the corners will stay in the same place. The middle will just tile across, etc. It's good for making highlighter frames or, you know, interface elements that need to repeat across large spaces. But try not to use that. Try to use it as sparingly as possible. And I've only got a couple set to be windows. Almost everything else is a static sprite. Excuse me. Almost everything else is a static sprite. The other thing to do is turn off per pixel cursor. I don't know why that was on there, but turn off per pixel cursor. You don't need that unless you're doing something very specific for clicking on a shape or something, because per pixel cursor means that wherever there isn't a dot of color, or wherever it's transparent, for example this frame, the only places you could click are on this colored outline. Nothing in the middle will do anything if you click anywhere in this blank space. But if you turn off per pixel cursor, you can click anywhere on the graphic, and that's usually what you want. But in this case, I've actually got this set to ignore cursor because it's just a frame. I want to be able to click the stuff underneath it, so that's also something to keep in mind. As far as optimization goes, another thing, I've shown some of these already. The resource profiler will show you the biggest objects in your game and how much you're using. This is the total memory. And the biggest things in mine so far are a couple of animations that take 30 to 40 frames, but they're only huge because these are big animations. I think one's 512 by 512, and it's 30 frames of 512 by 512. That's a lot. So my biggest objects, or my biggest resources, are just animated graphics. So anything that takes up a lot of frames like this. These are 40 frame animations that are like 256 to 512 in size. Everything else is relatively tiny, in the kilobytes. We're talking teensy tiny graphics, tiny music. Most of the music and audio are OGG files, so they're super tiny. Almost all of the models and almost all of the 3D stuff, anything that I've imported really is tiny, except for the animation. So checking your resource profiler can show you what's the biggest stuff in your project. And then you can check the unused resources section, which doesn't always work, as it says right here, not guaranteed, but it'll show you the things that aren't being used and how much space you're wasting by not using them. So it's telling me I have 73 megs of stuff not being used, but it's wrong because I'm using almost all of these. Almost every single one of these is inside an interface. This is almost every resource in my game, except it's only got half the sound effects. So I don't know exactly how this decides what's being unused or not, but you can go through and see. This also has a optimize resources option, which can take forever. Sometimes it goes really quickly, but as you can see it here, every time you save, or every time you work on it for a while, or re-import stuff, or move things around, sometimes it leaves little tiny bits of extra information or data. And going through the optimize resources tool can remove all that. And this doesn't look like it's going to be much. It's maybe a couple megabytes, maybe if I'm lucky a megabyte or two. But it should clear up some extra space, free up some resources. The total size of my game is probably 127 megabytes right now, and that's only because the animations that I'm using are just freaking massive. If I can figure out a way to cut those down, make things look smoother, I'll do it and save up some space. But unfortunately, that's where I'm stuck. If I want nice, smooth animations in the style that I like them to be, they're going to be big. That's unfortunate. But, que sera. So the resource profiler or optimizer can take some time. If you have a whole bunch, it's going to take a lot longer. You can see it's really only killing about 0.12 kilobytes from each thing. Some of the bigger animations are getting a little bit more squished, but this should save me some space, or some little tiny, tiny bit. Don't you crash on me now. So Starflight, that was an interesting game to approach or study for this kind of project. It's a lot more detailed. Interestingly, the process behind developing this game involved a fractal algorithm, a very specific fractal algorithm that was developed by one of the creators or one of the guys on the team. I believe he ended up leaving before the game was ever finished because he thought it was far too complex to ever make a game using this algorithm. And they would actually generate these planets with random surfaces, and you can see these little colors here. I don't know if there's one that's closer. Yeah, you can see the colors there, and there's all water. It actually had all the detail of gravity and landing against the gravity. If the gravity's too high, it would pull your ship into the atmosphere. You would get crushed and smushed. I actually think a lot of it was physically correct, like, 1.8 Earth gravities or 1.8 Gs, and it would affect your ship and all that. And there's a lot more, I would say, detailed than what I want to approach, because you actually have to change your posture, choose the different types of questions. Your star map was just as explorable. You fly from planet to planet and I guess this is one of the warp gates. You jump from sector to sector and explore the different planets in each one and interact with little aliens and stuff. It's very similar to what I'm trying to do, but there's way more to the planet stuff than I ever want to approach. 'Cause you can go to each of these little grid squares, and it's hundreds of them on every single planet. There's about 800 planets in the game, and they're all randomly generated using this fractal terrain algorithm, which, once you get down to the planet's surface, is accurate to the part of the planet that you clicked on. I don't even think I don't see a picture of that. I found some earlier. It lets you drop down onto the planet in the square that you click, and you get different types of terrains, different environments and stuff, deserts. And it was very basic. I'm also aiming for rather basic myself, but I think I'm going to be more basic than this, except Starflight didn't have a crew. You don't have a crew in Starflight, which, I saved less than a meg. So one of the main aspects of this game is going down to the surface with the crew members that you've hired. So you hire a ship full of crew members. You can only hire 2 at the beginning. You'll be able to get more later, but you start out being able to explore planets with your crew members and trying to keep them alive in order to get more resources so you can get more crew members to go explore more dangerous planets. That's ultimately the idea of the game loop. I want to be able to explore, gather resources, progress the story, come back to the station, hire new crew members, or level up the ones that you have. The attachment to the crew members is going to be something I'm considering too, whether you should have long-term crew members or if you're going to go through lots of them. I'm not sure yet. But that might be all I'm going to do right now. I'm going to fiddle around in the background offline for a while, but I just wanted to show a few of the things that I've been working on, take a look at some of the features of 001's weather system, and peek at some of the designs I'm working on for some of these ugly mountains, and try and refine some of these designs later, but you can check out the stream where I put these together. They're not the greatest right now, but they're all for prototyping the maps that I'm going to be doing stuff with rovers and surface exploration. That might be something I get into next time. I'm probably going to do more with my NPC ships as well. I'd like to not necessarily finish them, but get some more behaviors in there so that they flee from the player whenever they're in danger. And I want to actually implement the way for them to distinguish between friendly targets, hostile targets, and whether you have offended them by shooting them too many times. I don't want them to just attack you after one shot. I'd like them to attack you after you have offended them or triggered a certain condition. So that's probably what I'll cover next time. I might jump on later, do some more streaming related to these graphics and putting together tile sets. We'll see how I'm feeling in a bit, but thank you for checking these out. If you haven't, go to screamingbrainstudios.com. Check out all the free stuff you can get there. I was taking a peek at Material Maker, which is a really good program. You can also find a link for that here on my website as well. It's a texture creation tool that you can grab for free. But everything on the website's free. All the downloads are free. All the graphics are free. All the assets are free. All the tutorials, totally free. There are some old school graphics tutorials here you can read. And this list, almost everything on the list of tools is free. So check out screamingbrainstudios.com for free stuff. Thank you guys for watching. I'll catch you guys next time.